This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
What is going on, and welcome to Take on the World Lockup. I'm Mike D. This week, we're going to take a look at another Pennsylvania jail. I went down to visit the Franklin County Old Jail in Chambersburg, PA. And I thought when I got there, it was going to be a quick tour of a small town jail with a very short history lesson. What I got was a large dose of not only Chambersburg or Franklin County history, but it was also about the founding of our nation and the Civil War. This was a guided tour. Our guide, Tony, did an excellent job, and he gave us a lot of historical information. We entered the building through a large, heavy door that dates back to the beginnings of the jail. The door is about 2 inches thick and has a large skeleton key lock that still works. The Franklin County Jail was built in 1818, and construction continued while the jail was occupied through 1820. The original building was a 2-story building, and it included a dungeon. It also included several, what I would call penitent cells, and housing for a sheriff, a deputy, and families. Additions to the jail included an administrative area where inmates were admitted to the jail, a dispensary and medical area, a separate entrance for sheriff's families so they would not be in the line of sight of inmates, as well as a kitchen for the families and a parlor. The dungeon was used as an area for overflow and for solitary confinement. The dungeon cells have a domed ceiling displayed and are displayed with restraint rings in the walls and floor. There is a functional fireplace in the dungeon that provided heat for that area. Off to the side of the dungeon cells is a brick-floored kitchen area with a stairway for deliveries and a large root cellar for cold storage. The penitent cells have a door about 4 foot high and the doorwell entrance approximately 3 foot deep. Let's just say it wasn't easy for me to get in and out of them. Cell doors of this era were built like that for several reasons. One being the safety of the jail keepers. A low doorway made it hard for an inmate to lunge out at officers and attempt to escape or assault officers. It also forced an inmate to bow to enter the cell, forcing them to bow to be penitent and reflect on their crime. These doorways were influenced by the Quakers and Quaker ideals, and it is where the word penitentiary comes from. The famous Eastern State Penitentiary, designed by John Haviland in Philadelphia, employs this design. And if you listen to my last lockup, also New Jersey State Penitentiary. At one time, this jail was used as part of the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad helped slaves escape from the South. As early as 1827, Chambersburg was involved in the Underground Railroad. Although I'm not sure when this jail became part of that system, but by the onset of the Civil War in 1861, the Underground Railroad was well established in the area. During the 4 years of the Civil War, the city of Chambersburg was occupied 3 times by the Confederacy. During those occupations, Confederate authorities would search the area for escaped slaves. To thwart those searches, the dungeon area of the old jail had a false fireplace that was built and was used to hide runaway slaves during these searches. During the first 2 occupations of Chambersburg, there were several buildings and bridges burnt down. However, during the 3rd and final occupation, a large portion of the town was burnt to the ground. The old jail, however, escaped damage. There were several additions through 1880 when a full cell block was built. The cell block was 3 tiers of 5 cells each. Each cell is a metal gate secured with a hasp or padlock. Each cell had a side window looking into the cell block. Unlike many jails of this era, there was ventilation ducts in each cell, more than likely fed by wood or coal stove or one of the several working fireplaces in the building. Along with the cell block, one of the additions included a 20-foot high limestone wall and carriage gate enclosing the yard. This yard is also the location of the hangman gallows. Over the life of the jail, there were 3 executions on jail grounds. The rope for the executions was generally donated by Philadelphia Rope and Cordage Company to a local hardware store. Hezekiah Schaefer, convicted of killing his wife in February 1878, was hung on April 7, 1879. Peachy Swinger, convicted of murder, December 1878, was hung June 6, 1879. John Murtaugh was convicted of murder, but he escaped the gallows because he became so mentally deranged he was returned to his cell while he was on his way to the gallows. He was then judged insane and died in prison years later. The final execution was William Reed on April 30th, 1912. It had been 33 years since there was an execution at the jail. He killed Sarah C. Mantha. After shooting her 3 times, he turned himself into authorities. The execution was quite a public spectacle, with more than 300 gathered outside the jail to try to catch a glimpse of him hanging. A canvas tarp was put up to block the view of spectators who were inside the yard. The newspaper noted that the execution went off without a hitch, indicating the past executions were not so flawless. Generally, during hangings, sometimes the condemned's neck would fail to break, or the length of rope was miscalculated, and the person would hit the ground prior to the neck snapping. I'm not sure if that's what happened here, but from the notation in the article, it seems like something happened. William Reed, prior to being dropped from the gallows, bid goodbye to all. There was so much more historical information given to you on this tour. If you're in Chambersburg or Gettysburg area, there's a small $8 entrance fee. It's well worth the history that's given, as well as seeing a fine example of a 19th century jail. Chambersburg area has been part of nearly every part of early American history, from Captain James Chambers being part of the 1st Pennsylvania Regiment in 1775 to the Whiskey Rebellion in 1794. And the Whiskey Rebellion is one of the topics that Take on the World has taken on. Make sure you go back and check that out. Chambersburg has been involved through the American Civil War and well beyond. Pennsylvania has always had a rich history, and it is worth some time to stop here and explore it. Now, I'm going to touch on a little paranormal here. When we go places like this, I always ask the guide or the people there, have you ever had a paranormal experience here? Although it's well known that I'm a skeptic, it seems like our tour guide was a skeptic too, but he did relay, he was reluctant at first, but he did eventually relay a story. Several paranormal groups have gone here and done some research. I actually contacted one of them for some of the information on the execution, and they're very nice to get back to me. I appreciate that. I don't think there's an overabundance of paranormal activity here, but with any of these old jails, there's always going to be some suspicion of paranormal activity. So if that's your thing, you can check this out as well. Like I said, if you're in Chambersburg, $8 is worth the price of admission. We had a good time. We spent well over an hour there. Then we hit some breweries on the way out of town. So, with that, don't forget to check out the Deluxe Edition Network, deluxeeditionnetwork.com. Check out all the great shows on the Deluxe Edition Network. We give a shout out to some of the newer ones, Barrel Aged Chicks. They're coming out starting in January. If true crime's your thing, World's True Crime, check them out. There you go. Now that we took on old jail in Franklin County, you go take on the world, but don't get locked up.
This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.